My name is Russ Streiner, and I'm the founder and chairman of the board of the Pittsburgh Film Office. Well, fortunately, we didn't have many mishaps on Night of the Living Dead. One of the ones that we did have is that my brother Gary and I borrowed my mother's 1967 Pontiac Le Mans, which was a new car for her. We were filming in '67. And Johnny and Barbara pull up to the cemetery in this Pontiac Le Mans. And we do our dialogue and so forth. It was the very, very first day of filming. We didn't get finished with the film, with that scene on that day, because that's where the cemetery ghoul attacks Johnny and Barbara. They get into it. Johnny hits his head on the tombstone. We didn't get the scene finished in one day. We did get the early parts of the dialogue. That was all on day one. In the interim, which there was about a period of three and a half months, because we had to stop production in the middle of Night of the Living Dead to satisfy our commercial customers. We had to deliver their jobs and then get back to filming. So it was about three and a half months difference from day one in the cemetery and day two in the cemetery. Well, in the interim, someone had run into my mother's car and crashed at a fender bender accident. So Gary and I said to her, look, don't get your car fixed right now. You know, we'll stall off the insurance company, whatever. Don't get it fixed right now because we have to figure out a way to stop the car in the movie. And she agreed. And so when Barbara releases the handbrake and you see the car drift away, that damage was already on the car, but we filmed it in a way to make it look as though the tree, stopping against the tree, caused the damage. It didn't. It was a fender bender accident. He was tackled by a zombie on set. He was tackled by Bill Heinzman, and what happened, that was another near miss, and fortunately nothing terribly bad happened. There is a scene in the film where Ben, Dwayne Jones, pushes an overstuffed chair out onto the porch. They've discovered that these ghouls are afraid of fire. So they push this overstuffed chair out onto the porch, set it on fire, push it out on the porch. And in between takes, we would put the chair out, we'd put the fire on the chair out, reset the camera, reset the actors, reset the ghouls, and relight the chair and continue on. Well, we did that one or two times, and what we didn't know, and Gary was the chair wrangler. In addition to doing audio, he was the chair wrangler. A metal frame inside the chair heated up from it being on fire, and he sprayed gasoline on it, and the gasoline traveled back up the gasoline trail and caught him on fire, and he instinctively started to run. Bill Heinzman, the cemetery ghoul, was in the shot, and he ran after him and tackled him and put him out. So yes, Gary was tackled by a ghoul, but it was to put out a fire that inadvertently got set on him. He claims yes. I have no recollection of it. Bill Heinzman claimed over the years that one of the things that happened to him is that when he and Johnny were struggling and tussling in the cemetery, that I inadvertently kneed him in the groin. Which I don't know if that's true. I have no recollection of it, but, well, he was a ghoul anyway. I mean, where do their sensory nerve endings end? I mean, let's face it. But he always told the story that I kneed him in the groin. I was never aware that I had done it. During the production of Night of the Living Dead, because we were filming in black and white, we found that a great substitute for fake blood was chocolate syrup. And that's what we used throughout the film to be our blood. And yes, in the scene when the young couple gets blown up in the truck, that was indeed chocolate syrup. George, in general, had a habit of staying away from laundries and dry cleaners for clothes. He very often would go and buy new clothes. But on Night of the Living Dead, I don't think that was the case. I don't have any specific recollection. George and John Russo mostly they slept on the location. We didn't have money for security. They mostly stayed at the farmhouse, keeping an eye on things. And but their call times were also very early. So, but I don't think George bought a new set of clothes for every day. Well, it wasn't on set. This was during the finishing of the film. As I said, because of the short independent budget that we had to do everything that we could to try to enhance the money that was available to us to get the picture finished. And there was a company in Pittsburgh at the time called WRS Motion Picture Lab, and they were located in the Oakland section of Pittsburgh, and that's who did all of our processing, work printing, all of that throughout the film. And we were also doing the finishing there, the audio work and that kind of thing. So Jack Napier asked me if I wanted to play chess with him. And I said, well, what are the stakes? And he said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, if I lose this chess match, I will contribute the optical track to Night of the Living Dead. Okay, what if you win? What do I have to give you? In exchange, you give me the promise that you guys will use your best efforts, that when this movie sells to a distributor, that you will do your very best to make sure that WRS gets the release print order, because they thought it would be a sizable chunk of business, which it was. I said, okay, but there's no guarantee, because that decision may be completely out of our hands, but yeah, if you want to bet, yeah, I'll bet you. So I called George and I said, Jack Napier is asking about this chess playing bit. He said, well, go ahead, play. How can we lose? Well, we're making a promise that we'll use our best efforts. We played, he lost, he lived up to his word. They did the full optical track and did not charge us for it. It was about $3,200 bucks. But he did lose, but he kept his word. I can honestly say that on the set of Night of the Living Dead, there was no tension, period. Everybody, I mean, it was such a esprit de corps kind of project. There's no haggling, there were no creative differences. By the time we actually got to filming, any kind of debate of story point, should we do this, should we try that, all of that had been worked out well in advance. No, there was no tension of that sort, of any kind on the set of Night of the Living Dead. In filming Night of the Living Dead, which was done all in Evans City, with the exception of a couple of sequences. One, we filmed a sequence in Washington, D.C., because we wanted to create the story point that this problem was now much more far-reaching than just southwestern Pennsylvania, that it was becoming a national episode. The basement of the farmhouse in Evans City was too shallow. We could not possibly film in the real basement of the house. The latent image offices were here in Pittsburgh at 247 Fort Pitt Boulevard. And so we filmed all of the basement scenes of the house in the office building over here on Fort Pitt Boulevard. And it has become somewhat of a movie-making landmark for people, and sometimes the building owner is cooperative and sometimes he's not. But film history was definitely made in that building because that was our offices, it's where the editing rooms were, and it was also the basement that we happened to use. So 247 Fort Pitt Boulevard is as much a part of Night of the Living Dead history as anything.